Welcome back to the gutter, the Grindhouse gutter. And man, you're taking us all the way down into the gutter. If there was an actual Grindhouse building inside the gutter, that's where this movie would be uh, shown, would be displayed. So, what'd you bring us this month to the Grindhouse there, Smoke?
Oh, it's about to get real, right? Although some people, may have thought this movie was real. It is a pseudo snuff film, classic, you might say. Well, some people would say, from 1973 and 1977, and I'll explain why that is. But the movie is Last House on Dead End Street. Before we even get into anything, the rarity of this movie is that even in the Grindhouse district in, say, New York and 42nd Street and all that, it wasn't one that was playing all the time. It was fairly rarely screened there, but it did screen. And apparently, there's a backstory about how it caused a riot when the first time it was screened in its near 3 hour long print under the original title, "The Cuckoo Clocks of Hell." So I don't that story hasn't really been corroborated. It's just sort of a rumor that went around. So, but yes, that's the movie. Cuckoo Clocks of Hell slash Funhouse slash Last House on Dead End Street. So we'll get into all that here, but now I've seen this movie quite a few times, and I'll explain my origin with it or whatever. But was this everybody else's first time? I know my wife's seen it a few times now, but how about Donnie and Josh? How about y'all?
That's the first time I've seen first time I've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, don't it seems like I've seen some of the images from it, but no, I've never watched it.
Yeah, like I said, it's that rarity. It's not. I mean, for anybody out there right now that's watching it as of this recording and as of this probably as the show airs hits YouTube, it is available on Tubi. That's where you can watch it there. This DVD by Barrel Entertainment goes for like I don't know upwards of $200. Now my origin with this is from again this name comes up a lot. It's the father of our gore score here at the All American Spook Show podcast. It's Chaz Balin, the horror writer and columnist. He had a column in Gore Zone, Fangoria's sister magazine, called Peace of Mind, where he would write up on these obscure, some obscure, some not so obscure grindhouse type movies that were available on video.
No, from what I understand, there is no standalone uh release from Vinegar Syndrome, but they did put it out. The uncut theatrical version of the movie is available in 2K HD as a hidden feature on their release of Corruption on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I should have pulled that. I have that Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray, and I didn't pull it for the purposes of this episode. But yes, it is. It is on there, and yeah, as of this recording, it hasn't been released in any other format by Vinegar Syndrome yet. What I want to personally see is the 3 hour cut. But now we haven't gone into the background yet on who directed this movie. First of all, it was all right. Well, I've shown this before too, but Chaz Balin's Deep Red Horror Handbook, another good write up on here on Last House on Dead End Street, and here, and in this, which came out in 1989, that this Deep Red was printed. Chaz Balin actually uncovered the real name of the director by I don't know how he didn't really list a source in there. I think later on somebody had asked him, and it was by word of mouth or something. Somebody, a big huge horror fan, had told him this, and he went with it, and he was correct because on the video itself, on the actual Grindhouse version of the movie on 35 millimeter, all the names are changed. None of the actors are using their real names. And it says directed by Victor Janos, right? So who the hell is Victor Janos? Nobody was ever finding any information on Victor Janos. Obviously, it was a pseudonym. It turned out to be this guy named Roger Watkins. And in that Deep Red Horror Handbook, Chaz Balin actually mentions that, this movie directed by Roger Watkins, this New York underground filmmaker. And but for whatever reason, it fell through the cracks. Either Deep Red, Chaz was big in the horror scene, but I guess maybe people just didn't believe it because it didn't have any actual source for it being that name or whatever. So for the longest time, it still went. People didn't know who this guy was or whatever. Shortly before the DVD came out in the early to mid 2000s, Roger Watkins actually was on some horror forum or whatever and said something like, "Well, I'm the guy that directed Last House on Dead End Street." And, people are like, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." This guy just, and then he proved it, and then from that point he got together with the people, I guess at Barrel Entertainment or whatever, and he let them distribute it and got all the materials and all the things he had, did interviews. So this DVD is chocked full of like special features, interviews with him and whatnot. And then he even did some convention appearances. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but but yeah, at least he did come out of his reclusiveness to, acknowledge the movie and give a bunch of behind the scenes type stuff on it and whatnot.
Now
And
that
but
was
yeah, his name was. Go
now that
ahead.
was the star, right? Like that's Roger Watkins,
Yes,
the main.
yeah, he is. Yeah, and on the movie, you'll see the people starring in it. You'll see the director's name. You'll see the writer's name. They're all different as far as the writer, director, editor, but really they weren't. He did all that stuff under just different pseudonyms on the release itself. But yeah, it's Roger Watkins directed it, wrote it. I believe he edited it. I know he did a bunch of things behind the scenes and was the main star whose name in the movie is Terry Hawkins.
I think he must also be the uncle or father of Bill Hader too, because the
Yeah, yeah.
dude
He has an
look,
uncanny resemblance, right?
Spitting image, man.
yeah.
Yeah, this movie is that now. Some people really don't like this movie at all. Like, there's also, I think there's a thing where for a lot of people this movie was hard to find. I got lucky and found the VHS copy to rent back in the day, back in the, I guess, late '80s or so, late '80s, yeah. And so this movie had been built up in a lot of people's heads. It's because before they ever saw it.
I think it's one of those ones where it has like this strange appeal to it, but
Yeah,
it feels like a student film because basically it is, right?
it is really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he even had some people from the college he was going to school at. One of the professors there was the blind guy in the movie that one of the first victim, I believe, of what goes on. And we haven't really gone delved into it. I mentioned it being like a pseudo snuff film. It's sort of a without giving too much. I mean, not that there's a whole lot of the plot that you need to, it's not like a twist ending too much or anything. He already tells you kind of what he's doing, right? He's a porno filmmaker who he had been in prison for a little while. He got out of prison. Now he wants to do something more. He wants to do something nobody's ever seen, right? So, and his producer that he was making movies for, the people that he is distributing movies for, are kind of sick of seeing the same lame whatever stuff that's everybody's seen 1,000 times, and they wanted something more. So he gets this Terry Hawkins to make a movie for him, and Terry delivers basically a snuff movie, right?
Yeah.
Or a snippet of it, and then it just goes from there, and it gets each of the murders or snuff murders, whatever, gets more and more intense. So yeah, people actually thought this movie was a real. I mean, that's happened with Cannibal Holocaust. I mentioned.
Donnie, I'll run down the list of things that are going on in this movie. We've got cow slaughter. We've got a woman in blackface being whipped by a hunchback.
Oh yeah, like
Got, obviously, the snuff film stuff that's going on here. We've
yeah.
got a woman being branded. We have mutilation, multiple mutilations. So this is some highlight gutter, grindhouse gutter type stuff, right?
Don't forget the
Oh
deer
yeah.
hoof fellatio.
Yeah.
Jesus.
How could I forget? This is one it's even hard to describe. You described it about as well as you can, and we don't do spoilers here, so we'll leave it at that. But
Yeah, yeah,
it I think it is one of those type of movies that like it probably needs to be witnessed once, but that's it. Like in my opinion, like once is enough. But I could see where this type of movie would appeal to a certain smoke.
yeah.
I could see that.
Oh
What
yeah,
did
I've
you
seen
say?
it. I don't
What
know how
did you
many
say,
times.
Donnie?
Quite
At
a few
some point,
times.
you said this is a very smoky choice.
Oh yeah.
It is. It's very smoky.
Yeah. It's been, and it's also been a while since we had a because we have the, what do you call it, the disclaimer at the beginning of the video. It's been a while since we had anything that kind of lived
It
up to that
merits it.
disclaimer.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, true.
no doubt. Yeah, if you're seeing clips throughout this whole video here, it's because this is what YouTube allowed, right? And anything you don't see, they didn't let us pass through. So there's that.
Yeah,
So
there's quite a bit you wouldn't see. You wouldn't be able to see.
what we do here on
I'm
Grindhouse Gutter is we let the professor do a gutter rating, which is 0 through 10, basically kind of distills it down to what makes it grindhousey, right? And then he'll give his 0 to 5 rating. We don't do stars on here. We do uh, uh, cleavers for this one because we're classifying it as a horror movie. But depending on what genre it is, it might be choppas, it might be X's if it's exploitation, so to speak. Now, this is kind of a horror and an exploitation, but we'll lean more towards horror, right? So,
Yeah.
with all that being said, what give us your grindhouse gutter rating?
Oh, yeah. Well, the gutter rating's through the roof on this one, right? I mean, it's obviously a 10. I mean, it's up there with Cannibal Holocaust, etc. These extreme types of movies. I'm not saying it's fully as intense as Cannibal Holocaust all the way through. It's actually has more art film aspects to it sometimes in some instances than it does horror or standard, and there was a reason for that. This movie, well, I know despite what y'all might think of it or only maybe wanting to watch it once, it definitely does deserve a full episode. I mean, there is so much. I haven't even begun to scratch the surface on the background of this movie, really. So but yeah, we'll have to give it its own episode at some point in the future. But yeah, 10 on the Grindhouse meter for sure.
So
And so
that comes down to your opinion of the movie, which is always subjective. Obviously, you're a big
yeah.
fan of it. So 0 through 5, how many cleavers do you want to give it?
I'm maxing it out at 5. That's a personal rating for me. Like I said, it can grow on you. Some people it doesn't. There's some people that are movie reviewers that are huge Grindhouse fans that don't like this movie and it's not because of the extreme elements. The main reason they don't like the movie is because of the art house style aesthetic where in other words there's a bunch of stuff on the screen that if you are into Grindhouse movies for strictly for the gore and those things, there's plenty of that here, but there is some of that art house type stuff you maybe have to wade through to get there. I appreciate that aspect of the movie. It's very kind of a not you use the term psychedelic. I mean, I don't mean that in the sense that there's a bunch of flashing lights and psychedelic music and everything going. I just mean it's very what's the word, kind of a choppy in your head and stuff with the way that the dialogue is looped and dubbed and things of that. And it has its own ambience is all I can really boil it down to. And it has to do with all those negative aspects and the positive ones. Negative being for some people like the dubbing, like because it's all ADR. None of it is sound as it was recorded. It's just ADR and badly ADR because apparently he forgot maybe what the lines were.
Yeah,
so
clearly.
He's just like everybody's just saying, and the ADR is kind of saying what they thought the gist of the script was or whatever, but it doesn't match the lips most of the time, quite often. So, and there's that, like I said, the looping.
It's like a gory, even worse put together version of Manos, The Hands of Fate. I mean, in a lot of ways, like it just there's just a little bit more story going on than Manos.
Yeah,
That's just really, really gory compared to that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it really reminded me a lot of that. It felt like something that like MST3K would do, except they would never. I don't think they would ever touch this movie, because of the subject matter.
Yeah.
Maybe Riff Tracks did or something, but yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting choice. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but I could see where it would be, if you like this kind of thing, like we always say, this is the kind of thing you like, right? So I think we'll leave it there. So with that one in the past, what are you bringing us for the month of October? What are we going to be watching next month?
So yeah, for October, surprisingly, there's not really that I could rack my brain on. There's not a whole lot of Halloween themed. There's plenty of Halloween themed horror movies, but Halloween themed, specifically Grindhouse related movies. Last year I think it was last year that we did Monsters Christ at Pajama Party, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was about a year ago.
So there's probably some more of those I could have went down maybe that path as far as drive-in type fare or whatever. But no, I figured we're just gonna keep it. We're gonna keep this Grindhouse classic. I said put classic in quotes. If you're a fan of Grindhouse movies, these movies are classics. If you're not, they could they might very well be garbage, right? To some people. But
yeah.
So for the next one in October, we're gonna you don't have to go to Texas for a Chainsaw Massacre, right? You can come right here in October and check out Pieces with us. That's what it's gonna be. Pieces.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. That's one that I've seen, although it's been a long time. So I'm looking forward to watching that again and taking a little bit of a dive here. Like we don't take the deep dive that we do on the podcast here, but we still have a good time with it, as you just witnessed. So
yeah.
Make sure to check out the podcast. It comes out every Monday at 6 p.m. East, wherever you get your podcast, or right here on the YouTube channel. Stick around here on the channel for our other series, Hammer Horror and Order, Video Vortex, lots of other cool stuff going on. And like we said, the month of October is right around the corner. So for Will, couldn't be with us, Donnie, Tiana, Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. We are the All American Spook Show, and we'll talk to you next month.